Welcome back to Apex Sci-Fi. Deep beneath the crust of the planet Telos Minor, the silence is not a sign of peace. It is a sign of a nightmare. Telos was once a thriving sapphire mining colony, a place of constant clatter and industrial roar. But 3 weeks ago the comms went dark. When the relief ships arrived, they found the gates open and the air thick with a sweet, sickly smell. They found the miners, but they didn't find the people. The colonists were standing in the streets, in the shafts, and in their homes, perfectly still, connected to one another by thin, translucent neural wires that sprouted from the base of their skulls like spider silk. They had become a hive. And at the center of that hive was a Parasite Queen, a rare, ancient organism that does not kill its prey, but preserves it as a living extension of its own nervous system. The hegemony's first instinct was to glass the planet from orbit. To them, the lives of 10,000 miners were a small price to pay to stop the spread of a neural plague. But the miners are still alive. Their hearts are beating, and their minds are trapped in a perpetual waking dream. Silas Vane was hired by the families of the lost. The contract was clear: infiltrate the colony, locate the Queen, and bring her back alive. Without the Queen there is no antidote. Without the Queen, 10,000 people stay hollow forever. Silas Vane arrived on Telos Minor under the cover of a tectonic storm. He didn't wear his heavy combat armor for this hunt. He wore a specialized slate-gray infiltration suit, designed to be silent and flexible. But his obsidian mask and tattered hood remained the same, the dark signature of the hunter who goes where the light does not reach. Vane descended into the primary mining shaft. The air was heavy with spores. His mask filtered out the toxins, the blue visor line cutting through the gloom. As he moved, he passed the meat puppets. A group of 5 miners stood in a circle around a crate, their hands hovering just inches from the metal, frozen in a task they had begun weeks ago. They didn't breathe. They didn't move. But as Vane passed them, their heads slowly turned in perfect unison, their milky eyes following his shadow. The Queen was aware of him. Every person in the colony was a sensor, a camera, and a nerve ending for her. Vane did not draw his vibroblade. He knew that any injury he inflicted on the miners would be felt by the entire hive, triggering a violent response. He moved with a cold, calculated precision, using a specialized jamming device to create a small bubble of neural silence around himself. As long as he stayed within the bubble, the Queen could see him, but she couldn't track his thoughts. He reached the Great Vault, a massive cavern where the rarest sapphires were once harvested. The walls were no longer stone, they were covered in a thick, vibrating organic carpet. At the center of the room, suspended from the ceiling by thousands of neural wires, was the Queen. She was a pulsing mass of translucent flesh and glowing amber light, her long, spindly limbs reaching out to tap into the colony's primary power grid. As Vane stepped into the vault, the silent miners began to scream. It wasn't a sound from their throats, it was a psychic wail that vibrated through the metal of Vane's mask. The Queen began to pull on the wires, and the 10,000 miners across the planet began to march toward the vault. They weren't soldiers, but they were a wall of flesh that Vane could not kill. Silas Vane stood his ground. He adjusted the setting on his tranquilizer rifle, loading a concentrated sedative designed specifically for the Queen's unique physiology. "You can hide behind them," Vane said, his voice a low mechanical growl that echoed through the organic chamber. "But you are just a parasite. And every parasite has a weakness." The Queen sent the first wave of miners at him. They moved with a jerky, unnatural speed, their hands reaching out to tear at Vane's suit. Vane didn't fire. He used his superior human agility to weave through the crowd, using non-lethal pressure points to collapse the miners safely to the ground. He was a shadow moving through a forest of living statues. He leaped onto a cooling pipe and vaulted over the crowd, landing directly beneath the Queen's pulsating core. The Queen shrieked, her amber light flaring to a blinding intensity. She dropped from the ceiling, her long limbs striking out like whips. Vane took a hit to his shoulder, the organic limb tearing through his suit, but he didn't flinch. He fired the tranquilizer. The dart buried itself deep in the Queen's central nervous hub. For a moment the world stood still. The miners stopped their advance. The Queen's amber light flickered and dimmed. Then, with a wet, heavy sound, the Queen collapsed into Vane's waiting containment net. The neural wires across the planet turned gray and brittle, snapping like dry twigs. 10,000 miners fell to their knees, gasping for air as their individual consciousness returned to their bodies. The hive was broken. Vane didn't wait for the thank yous. He didn't wait for the hegemony ships to land and try to claim the Queen for their own weapons research. He dragged the unconscious parasite back to the Vesper and took off before the first transport hit the atmosphere. He delivered the Queen to a neutral medical research station on the edge of the rim. He ensured the contract was fulfilled and the antidote was developed, but he made sure the Queen remained under the guard of the families, not the government. In the underworld, they say Silas Vane is a man who can walk through a crowd of ghosts and come out with the truth. They say he is the only one who can fight 10,000 men without shedding a single drop of blood. But Vane doesn't care about the numbers. He just looks at the ledger and moves to the next signal. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. The hive is silent, but the hunter is always awake. If you felt the tension of that silent colony, hit that like button. We have 9 more hunts in this new arc. Comment below. Would you trust a government to develop a cure, or would you follow Vane's lead? Subscribe so you don't miss the next hunt, the ghost of Sector 9. The Vesper is back in the dark. The hunt continues.